just do it.
Good evening, everyone. Delafield Planning Commission meeting. Prior to the Planning Commission meeting, there will be held by the Town of Delafield Town Board and Plan Commission at the Delafield Town Hall, W302, 54 Maple Avenue, Delafield, Wisconsin, 53018. To consider owners to amend the district zoning map of the Delafield from the area zoned A1 agricultural district to A. The subject property is approximately 4 acres. F1 wetland floodplain district is not. Property is described as a portion of Lot 1 of located in the northeast quarter of Section 33, East, Town of Delafield. More specifically, the property is located at LT 08.009.
Yep, I'll give an overview here of the proposal. So you can see up on the screen, hopefully, that the subject property is located right here. It's a 4-acre property located west of Maple Avenue in the south portion of the town. And the reason for the rezone request, here's the stretch of properties here that are currently zoned A1, is to go to A2 in order to meet open space requirements to construct an accessory building. The area that is in green here, which is the WF1 wetland floodplain district, that is not proposed to change. That is a wetland area. So that is not part of the proposal. It would just be this tan color, which is A1 to A2. Looking at the surrounding zoning area here, you have other A2 districts here. This dark brown color is A3. So similar in nature. These A1 districts on these more rural properties like this, or the rural residential properties, I'm sure that a couple of you that have been on the board for our Plan Commission for a while have seen them come through. Generally, it's because they can't comply with open space in order to do some sort of improvement on their property. We've seen, when I was with the county, those are the most common ones by far that came through from the town of Delafield. Ultimately, that might indicate that you may want to consider doing a larger sweep, comprehensive sweep of the A1 district to not create this issue for our homeowners kind of individually coming through to rezone their properties to a more appropriate district. So it's something to kind of keep in mind as these continue to pop up over time. But ultimately, the A2 district is more appropriate for this parcel. There is a 3-acre minimum, a 200-foot average lot width, both of which the lot complies with, so it fits better than the A1 district, which has that 40-acre minimum. The offset is a little bit more restrictive, however. It's at 30 feet, whereas the A1 district is only at 20 feet. So the proposed building, and I'll just kind of pull up the survey here so you can see, initially was proposed to be at 29.9 feet. He's going to have to adjust it ever so slightly to get to 30 feet. There as well. And then you can see the wetland complex here on the survey. So just some minor adjustments for the proposal that ultimately doesn't really affect the rezone itself. You can also see in my report on the table, the existing lot, the open space right now is at 94%. The A1 district requires 95% open space, and the A2 is 85%. So if you have 40 acres, 95% open space still gives you a lot of room to build buildings. But if you only have 3 acres and you're required 95% open space, it doesn't really leave too much room to make improvements on still a relatively large property, a 4-acre property. So I am recommending that the Plan Commission make a recommendation to the town board for approval, but this is still the public hearing part, I'm realizing, so we'll get to that in a little bit. I did receive a few phone calls about this request. Mostly just neighbors inquiring like what this was and what it meant. And after talking through what a rezone is and how it doesn't actually affect their properties, both of the callers are already zoned A2. No one had any issues with it and said, well, we won't be attending. I said, okay. So,
Does anyone else wish to be heard? And are the homeowners planning to film there?
yes, Mr. Rogers is here.
Okay. And do you need to, would you wish? Here, he indicated that. Then we will close the public hearing portion of this meeting, and we will start scheduled plan commission meeting. Call the plan commission meeting to order, and we will rise for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the October 7th, 2025 hearing. Are there any comments on the minutes?
I motion to approve the meetings for October, meeting minutes, October 7th.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. And then the next item on the agenda is communications. Is there anything new? Okay, so there's no new communications. The item 4A, unfinished business, is the consideration and possible action on a request from Robert Davies, Red Properties LLC, and William B. and Kathy J. Davies Revocable Trust owners to rezone a 10.4946 acre parcel of land located on the south side of U.S. Highway 18, approximately 1,200 feet west of County Road G, Elmhurst Road, from A1 Agricultural District to A2 Rural Home District. Tax key number DELT 0860991001. Ms. Lado?
Okay, so back in July, we held a public hearing on this rezone. We had briefly discussed that there was a certified survey map that was supposed to be accompanying it, but we had taken that off the agenda to get a little bit more information from the town of Genesee and from the applicant on what all was being proposed. So quite a lot has occurred over the last, 5 months in doing that. They have resubmitted a revised CSM after we met with the applicant and with the town of Genesee to discuss the subdivision as a whole, trying to work out some things about the road. There is still, as far as the development as a whole goes, there is still some things that they need to work out as far as DOT requirements and land resources requirements. They are with Waukesha County, who handle the stormwater management. So, and we can get in that as I go through some of these details, but so the two different items on the agenda, my staff report I kind of wrote as one, so if it's okay with you, Chairwoman, we'll just kind of combine the analysis all into one
fine.
report. And we'll start really with the outline of the certified survey map. So I'm going to pull that up here and just quick give you a overview of the subdivision, just so you have this in your mind. It doesn't really matter, but just for context, it can help a little bit. So this is in the town of Genesee and has the 8-lot subdivision, and then here's the Delafield border here. Okay, so that's just for context. And here is the certified survey map. So you have Highway 18 up here, Genesee down here, the public road going through to access the subdivision. In July, the certified survey map that they had proposed at the time, which was not an exhibit to the rezone report, but it was mentioned that there was the land area. So this is where it gets a little bit dicey, and the Plan Commission will need to make a determination on this. They had submitted for a 1-lot certified survey map. Tim's report, he had written all those reports because it was during our transition area, had indicated that they could have up to 2 lots here based on the land use plan designation and the zoning. So I talked to the town attorney because this certified survey map now has 2 lots instead of 1. and whether or not that is a significant change that would require a new public hearing for the rezone. In his mind, and I agree, it's not a substantial change to require that offhand when they submitted for this. But that is something that's on the table that you should discuss of whether you agree with that or not, if you think it's a substantial change to go from the 1 lot to the 2. I will say that the report in July did indicate that 2 lots were available, but they'd only been requesting 1 at the time. And then there was no exhibit map that showed only 1 lot that was with the documentation for that rezone. So I do think that there is no, there's little room for anyone to think that that couldn't have been a change. They're also applying for a rezone for the entire lot. It's not specific to these individual parcels. It's the entire 10 acres. So as I kind of go through this, I think that's something, and if you want to talk about it now, before we go any further, if you think that's a substantial change, that might be something that you want to discuss, I suppose, if you believe a new public hearing should be required for the rezone.
I don't believe it's a substantial change. I mean, the report showed that 2 lots were available. There wasn't really a drawing that's showing the 2 lots. Table it and send it back to get more information. So now we got this 2 lots in front of us that meets all the open space requirements.
Okay, perfect.
And it's zoning, not a certified survey map, so.
Correct.
Zoning's the zoning.
Yes, that's correct. Typically, there is a map that accompanies a rezone request to show the area that's being rezoned. Technically, that map, even though it wasn't included, it didn't change because the entire 10 acres is being rezoned. So, but both the town attorney and I wanted to make sure that that was brought up and on the record, and we can move forward, that the request is not substantially changed and the public hearing was held in accordance with the town code. So,
Have any concerns?
No, okay.
okay.
All right.
Great. So with that, so the 2 lots now, I will go to the next page. Excuse me for some of my markings on here, but we have the outlot on the north, which is a stormwater outlot. It will have, they've proposed an infiltration basin currently. Because of the Thanksgiving holiday, I had to write the report knowing that I was going to get comments from certain people later because everyone was on vacation. So I talked to Land Resources Division, Leif Hauge, the civil engineer there, on Monday, and he doesn't believe that the infiltration basin is really going to work as intended. However, he said very minor changes are necessary to create a different stormwater management practice here, and he had no concerns and still was recommending preliminary approval of it. This access easement that, I'm just going to kind of go lot by lot here. So this access easement that's being proposed is for the benefit of this parcel here in the event that DOT ever requires single driveways to be removed from Highway 18. DOT likes this idea. They want this easement, but it does pose a couple issues from DOT standpoint and Land Resources standpoint. For one, it's slightly overlapping the location of where the basin's being proposed. However, that basin still is subject to change, so that might go away on its own. The other comment is that DOT has a 50-foot setback from the state highway and has requested that this be shifted 50 feet south and then start at 60 feet. Well, then that's going directly over the infiltration basin or whatever that basin ends up being. So while the access easement is a good idea to have on here and is being offered just by the landowner just to try to help this parcel out someday in the future, potentially, they're going to need to work out if it's actually feasible. It may not be, given the topography out here as well, to actually install some kind of whether it be a road or just a driveway or who knows what could happen in the future. They'll need to locate it in a location that you can actually put something there, that's feasible for the topography, that DOT is agreeable to, and that doesn't intercept with the stormwater best management practice. So the easement is a good idea, but is still kind of a lot of moving parts to that. Moving on to lot 1, this page again. So both Lot 1 and Lot 2 meet the A2 district requirements. They both have a minimum of over 3 acres and are 200 feet in width. So there's no issue with that. Outlot 2 that you see here, there's this 200-foot wide road reservation. After meeting with the developer's agent, the engineering firm, we had discussed having this road reservation to aid in an access point in the event that the parcel to the west would be developed, which it likely will at some point in time. So we thought setting up the road location now might be a good idea to do that, because it'd be unlikely they would get access from 18, especially if there's a public road there. They would not be able to get access to 18. They'd have to come off the public road. So after speaking with the developers, engineers, I'm just kind of estimating a little bit, but if the lots are here, the crest of the hill is somewhere in this area, having the road reservation in that area across from where driveways would be for those 2 residential lots was logical. The town engineer agreed with that as well. And then it airs on the long side toward 18, so that when you're going down the hill, there's additional room that way. So we all are, the town of Delafield and the engineer all thought that was probably the best location to have a road if this parcel were ever to be redeveloped. DOT disagrees with that, and they want the first 300 feet of the public road to be reserved for a road reservation. So DOT comments on this development, there's quite a few of them. They have to look at this holistically, not just at this CSM, right? They need to also look at the subdivision in Genesee, which is what makes this complicated. The topography here also creates the location for the road. There's a specific spot that it should be, which is where they put it. But DOT would like it to be against the west property boundary as well. So on the CSM, you can see that it's just slightly off here. And that's to help with the topography, save a really nice mature tree line. But they would like it abutting that western lot line, and then the first 300 feet reserved for future public road extension onto that western lot. So I talked to them extensively about it, saying that's really not the best location for a road connection and actual planning for a subdivision on that lot based on that lot's topography and all of that. But ultimately, the developer's agent's going to have to work with DOT to either convince them otherwise or to change it to get approval from them. So this CSM that's before you is a preliminary CSM. There are changes that are going to need to be made, but fundamentally, this CSM is still the one that's going to move forward should you choose to approve it. It's still going to facilitate a public road, a stormwater outlet, and 2 residential parcels. So the fundamental concept of the CSM will not change. There just might be some modifications as it relates to the exact location of the road, if it needs to be shifted over a little bit and just kind of go down a straight line, and then this easement if it needs to change at all. And then the last thing, I won't say the last thing, what might be the last thing, is there's a 60-foot wide tree preservation easement. In 2024, when the landowner started to kind of inquire about dividing this parcel, Waukesha County staff went out and did a site visit to try to evaluate some of the natural resources on this parcel. In Genesee, there are some, I think that they were critical species habitats, maybe in some of the isolated natural resource areas. Trio may be able to comment on that, but that's not really relevant to the certified survey map. But this tree preservation easement has some of the really nice, high quality, more historic trees. If you go back to the 1940s aerial, those are the ones that are there on the parcel and are really the legacy trees. So this is a nice easement to have. part of the construction plans show that some of it's going to be disturbed for the public road, but that's not, after speaking with Waukesha County again about their site visit, they said that's really not where the quality trees are anyways, so we're kind of talking in this area here. So back here, kind of at the top of this hill, there are kind of those really nice trees that will be preserved. And then finally, as it kind of relates more, so that's sort of going through the certified survey map portion. I don't think there's anything else I necessarily need to say about that. But as it relates to the rezone a little bit more, like I said, they are matching the A2 district requirements. And the isolated natural resource area is encompassing this entire parcel. I'll just kind of turn that on here just so you can sort of see. This is all considered isolated natural resource area, this hatching here. The town of Delafield land use plan indicates that they should be preserved and developed at a density of no greater than 2 dwelling units per 5, or 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres, which is how we get to the 2 dwelling units here. Now, because they are disturbing approximately, I think I measured about 3 acres or so with the public road, the stormwater pond, all of that. It's a little bit more disturbance than if it was just going to be 2 standalone residential lots. So I do have some recommendations for your consideration to recommend to the town board, specifically tied to the rezone. What that does is it's called a conditional rezone, and the rezone then the lot can only be utilized for what it's being proposed for if these conditions are met. So in this case, the recommendation is that lots 1 and lot 2 have a limited disturbance of 30,000 square feet on each lot, excluding the grading that's required for the public road on lot 2, since that's really more of the lot of the development grading that's being proposed. So the 30,000 square feet, probably 20 years ago, the county, with direction from the townships, when they put in their isolated natural resource and environmental corridor restrictions, the regulations for lots entirely within environmental corridors is 15% up to 3/4 of an acre of disturbance. So if you have a 5-acre parcel, you get 3/4 of an acre of disturbance. And then less than 5 acres, it gets a little bit smaller based on whatever 15% is. That's how the math kind of works out. On the civil plans, they have kind of a rough estimate of where they think the houses will be located based on the topography, views, septic, soil testing, and the driveway location. And I just measured it out, and it was about 30,000 square feet, about what they were estimating. And then in Delafield's code, in the environmental corridor overlay, it does talk about, which is not, it's not zoned that here. So we're kind of focusing on the land use plan portion of it as a basis for recommending this type of condition, but I'm just trying to give you an idea of what's in the town's code. It doesn't really go off of square footage. It's more of pick your disturbance area, build your house, and then you get an additional amount of feet past your home site to disturb. So it's kind of like there's your house, and then you can go 25 feet, 25 feet, 35 feet, and 25 feet, and that's your yard. So it's a little bit of a different practice. Given that this one, the lots are still relatively large, I felt that 30,000 square feet was a good recommendation and still kind of in line with other environmental corridor properties that have those specific protections on them elsewhere in the county. So that's kind of the basis for that number and that recommendation without being overly restrictive and would protect them from clear cutting these parcels, which have wooded lots and steep slopes. So that's for the rezone. And then on the certified survey map, there are quite a few different conditions here. Most of them are just kind of ensuring that the other reviewing entities that need to see this, like DOT, like the Environmental Health Division at Waukesha County, like the Land Resources Division at Waukesha County, that they have all seen and commented on the CSM. They they have now, but that doesn't mean that they've gotten everything accomplished that they need to do. So they still need to have the soil test reviewed. But everything is proceeding the way that I would expect it to proceed in a development like this. Like I said at the beginning, this is a pretty complicated development given the two jurisdictions. And then one other thing that actually I do want to point out that's a little bit different than my report after I talked with Leif Hauge again with the Land Resource Division. The outlot 1 of the certified survey map, not to backtrack, but this is important. Initially, the thought was that the outlot, which has stormwater management facility that's required because of the public road, would be owned in common by the lot owners of the subdivision in Genesee. Typically, that's how that works, right? When you have a stormwater pond, it's owned in common by all the lot owners in the subdivision. In this case, it doesn't really work. And Land Resources had some concerns that legally there was no way to do that. So Town of Delafield is part of the state's MS4 program, which is their stormwater program. As part of that permit, you take credit, so to speak, for these stormwater ponds that are located in these subdivisions. And that means that the town is somewhat responsible for making sure that they're actually maintained in a way that they're, and inspected to make sure that they're functioning as intended. So if the lot owners in Genesee own a piece of the property in Delafield, Delafield does not really have any way to put a special charge on the lot owners in Genesee. So Land Resources brought up, and it's required in their ordinance, that whoever owns a stormwater pond be the people who are creating the stormwater. Leif was explaining how the stormwater is all coming from the road and from the development of these two lots. He said there's actually a divide here, and all the drainage from this location north will drain to this site, and everything south is going to drain to Genesee. He said it's just a natural divide as it is, so it really does make more sense for Lot 1 and Lot 2 to own the stormwater pond here, even though it does seem a little bit unusual from a high level that two lot owners would own a single stormwater BMP for a public road that serves a subdivision. But it seems like that is what will have to happen, both from their ordinance and for the ability for Delafield to take credit for the stormwater pond and help make sure that it actually is being inspected and maintained properly, and have the ability to put special charges on Lot 1 and Lot 2 in the event that the town has to actually maintain it themselves. So that's a little bit different than what's in my report, because that's new information that I just got on Monday. So is there any questions? That was a lot of information.
Several. And I don't know if it's for you, or some of it might even just be because we keep saying if and when it gets developed, or what's going to happen with the rest of the lots. Is the developer, or is it getting self-developed? Is there anybody here about that?
Yeah, Trio is here.
Actually, if you could approach the microphone, please. And then state your name and your business address.
So Nick Wallerman, engineer with Trio Engineering, here with Bob Davies, the landowner. He'll be self-developing this project, and yeah.
Okay, well, my question is really maybe more, Bob, what's your thoughts? Do you think because I know we get two in town of Delafield, but what's your thought of what the big picture will be for that beautiful
Actually,
property of
sir,
yours?
you'll have to approach the microphone because
If you would mind coming, if you have a sense, just to kind of help us look at the big picture of things, please.
I can try to answer on Bob's behalf as well, but this is ultimately the big picture. Kind of the CSM that Rebecca laid out is ultimately like the stepping stone, per se, to this larger subdivision here in the town of
Rebecca, can you
Delafield.
make it a little larger or not? Because we didn't have that in our packet, so this does help a lot. I didn't see this, so, okay, thank you.
So what we have is an 8-lot subdivision, relatively large lots, anywhere from 7 to 15 acres, I believe, in size, with the intent of being that large, kind of to just provide, a very beautiful, large lot. So this is ultimately the vision
Okay.
that kind of the CSM will create, is the public road access to this.
And you're just not kind of doing it all now because?
They are doing it all. It is all right now.
So Genesee has signed off on all this too, okay,
No, it's tracking along
okay.
with this. So because it's two municipalities, right, the land division kind of is tracking separate, but the project as a whole in terms of engineering, stormwater, everything, that's all tracking as one.
Well, you mentioned, Rebecca, a couple times, you kept saying if they do this, if they do that in the future.
So they've submitted to Genesee. Right now they're doing a certified survey map there's even larger, more acreage than what you see up here. So it'll split off this rectangle here, and then they'll do the subdivision plat. All of these things, it's complicated because they happen concurrently, but some things can't happen until something else happens, and it's a little bit of who's going first to do what. Genesee, did they act last night?
They don't act until January.
Oh,
No
okay.
December median.
But they wanted to know that the public road was going to be approved, because they can't approve a preliminary plat that doesn't have access. So this is really kind of the first step to give some assurances that, yes, this parcel can be developed as a subdivision. So that's kind of why. It's not really, it's an if you approve it, is really what I mean for that. But really, they're tracking together. Delafield and Genesee are trying to work together along with the county, who has a lot of involvement in this as well.
Regarding the road, I know that, and when we talked in July, that was, I think, some of our original, which is why we tabled it. We talked about the town of Delafield having to maintain the road when we have two of the lots and Genesee has more. And then I know in there that we're kind of working out a swap. So what's the linear footage compared to like what this road will be compared to what Genesee is doing for us on DT? And do we have that other places that they do it for us, we do it for them?
I don't think there's any other place. I think right now they're doing DT just to do it. And I think when we looked, it was, I don't know the exact lineal footage, but it was pretty comparable.
I just want to clarify that the maintenance that we're talking about is strictly snow removal.
Exactly.
Not resurfacing, not curb, not any of that stuff. This is only snow removal. So they remove snow for us on DT. We would take the road and come down to the lollipop area and just take the snow off, and that's it.
But not in terms of, we don't have to worry, we're not talking about paving.
If it's paving, we're going to have to work together if they want the entire portion done, but we would only pay for our section of this development.
Knowing that everybody will be using it, so when it does take its wear and tear, it's getting use from the lots behind it. That was just some of our more long-term things. I just want to make sure we're documenting in terms of maintenance. And then our snow removal, isn't it going to be a little bit more cumbersome, just from the slope that we're dealing with?
I think it would be more difficult for us to try and stop at the town line and then back up our equipment than it would for us to come through this circle. We're still kind of talking about what angles would be best for the circle because it looks very odd as it is now, but this is a very large circle, so it would be hopefully easy for our equipment to get around that.
No, I get it, makes sense for us to
Yeah.
do it all. I was thinking more compared to the DT thing. That's a pretty straight shot.
So the DT is kind of like a triangular shaped. So they come up and around, go on 18 and then come back around. But for us to just come across the street again, we'd have to find somewhere to turn around if we were going to limit ourselves just to the town line. That would be difficult too.
Okay, all right. That answers. That was really one of my big concerns in July. So I get it, and seeing that in the report made sense if we're going to swap it out. The disturbance, that was my other thing in terms, I'm pleased that we're seeing the easement for the trees. But what about, that's a gorgeous piece of land up there, it's gorgeous. So are there other hidden gems kind of tucked around in there that aren't part of this 60 feet that we have the ability, or I don't want to say the right to say, ooh, that tree we should try to keep that one too? I mean, or is that not something that's our part of our jurisdiction?
We cannot talk about that tonight. We have to stick to the topic on the agenda. So that would be a separate discussion item that we can put on a different agenda for discussion only, but it would be all hypothetical. We have to hone in on this.
It was
right
more
now.
just about tree easements, I guess is what I was.
Yeah, so I do have in the report about the INRA, right? We're
Right.
taking isolated natural resource area and allowing it to be developed. That is the proposal. So the recommendation for the disturbance envelope, that is the goal of that. And then there are what's very common on almost all plats, I would say, in Waukesha County now, at least to some varying degree, have preservation restrictions. Anytime there's isolated natural resource area, environmental corridor, wetland, or floodplain, those get set on there. You have kind of, I ran out of time before I had to get these out to really kind of refine some, but there are in front of you some revised language, which is what I had sent to Trio 2, that gets put on all CSMs that kind of protects the area outside of a disturbance envelope anyways. And in short, they say that the removal of dead, dying, disease, invasive trees may be removed, but anything else doesn't. Isolated natural resource areas are pockets of resource, right? They provide habitat for animals, plants. There are some is it a critical species habitat? Do you remember?
I believe to the west.
Okay. And there was something here, like a natural area
That is
or something.
SPEC, yeah, primary measurement
Yeah.
corridor.
There was something in this little pocket I remember as well. But that's the point of that restriction, is to help to minimize the amount of disturbance on these isolated natural resource areas, so that I don't know why anyone would necessarily do this, to buy a wooded lot and then want to cut everything down. That doesn't really make a lot of sense, but people do.
Oh, yeah.
So that is part of that requirement as well. So then, as part of zoning approval, they'll need to show that disturbance envelope, where they're actually cutting trees and where they're building, so they are in compliance with the conditional rezone. So that's how that kind of works long term.
Noted that, under the CSM recommendations, what falls under that disturbance, but when you say includes grading, that's that 25 feet each direction from the house. Is that what the idea of that?
So that is there are only a couple places in the town really where that zoning district even exists. And that's all that the town code really has to point to. Tim, in his report in July, had kind of recommended that provision because that's what he could tie it to. I'm trying to tie it more to the land use plan and allowing a little bit more of a bubble of that, instead of, because I don't know, what if people have very, very large estate homes now too. It's nice to kind of tie just that number to it, instead of, well, I can keep going. You can kind of keep encroaching it with that type of provision sometimes, right? So yeah, I have a building, but I want another building, and I can go 25 feet from that building. Now I want a horse barn, and I can go 25 feet from that building. Whereas this sort of limits your area, hopefully together, right? You're going to get the most bang for your buck, so to speak, if you can put all your buildings together in that 30,000 square feet, instead of kind of piecemealing them around the property. Yeah, yes.
It's a disturbance area, it's not a pervious, impervious type of
I
calculation.
almost tied it to that when I was thinking of it, but yeah, it's
Yes, that's correct. They are different. So this is literally cutting down the trees, grading, creating your driveway, your septic system, building all your buildings, having your yard. So, because obviously you buy this property, you want to be able to put what you want there. But that has been sort of the number that feels appropriate for this size parcel, where you really don't, at least in my experience, haven't really run into problems with people not being able to do what they want on their property while still protecting the integrity of the corridor. Does that make sense?
fair number. You can do a lot with 30,000 square feet of.
Any further questions or discussion?
Can I ask a process question? I know we want to approve this, especially since there's a next step. You said that there's a lot that still needs to be worked out. Are we approving something that's not valid, right, when we approve it?
So that's a good question. So this still has to go to town board. And you could do two things. One, you could table it until everything is completely set in stone. And then if they can come back and show you a final CSM. You could also recommend approval of this preliminary CSM, subject to all of the items listed here being worked out on a final CSM. And that would not go before town board until all of those things are
We would
addressed
approve it, subject to all of those things being resolved for it.
prior
knowing
to
that the
town board.
Town will then look at it and say, it looks like, okay,
Yeah.
that's the move forward then.
So, because again, fundamentally, the public road, the two lots, and the stormwater outlot are not going to change. There are the biggest kind of question mark really is this road going to be shifted over on this lot line?
But maybe for you to say, have you considered having the easement for the road side of, on lot one, on the south side of outlot one?
That is kind of the direction that the DOT suggested, but it doesn't really create a great access point for the neighboring
We
lot.
don't need to discuss it
So,
tonight even, just as long as you've thought of it.
Right.
Looks like it might be problematic to that.
Yeah.
but you can kind of see, so with their 50-foot setback they want, it's roughly where you can kind of see the gravel start, more or less.
Yeah, it's in the best spot for that.
Right,
yeah.
so we may not go with 60 feet access easement beyond that. We might shrink it down
Okay.
potentially, just for the reason you said, it kind of chews up the entire outlot.
Yeah, it's a really good idea, but it's becoming a little challenging, it seems like.
So I think we can do it for less. We would love to keep it there. It's just a really good due diligence thing to kind of do now. So, no, there's, yeah, tons of thought going into that. But you can kind of see there, so that 50 feet, if we did an easement just south of that, it would kind of be able to tie in, really cleanly. To the drive where that number 1 is,
Here.
that's kind of down just a little more south.
Oh.
I believe that's kind of like the southern lot line.
That A1
Oh.
still, we need to address that at some point, because now they're sitting at some.
Eight,
way-
the east, A2.
So it's way out of. I mean, they can use it, but. it
For
doesn't-
A2?
A2, they're good.
Well, I mean, they're good, but it doesn't reflect, it's a much smaller lot than it used to be. Oh, I'm sorry.
that lot, it's not on the agenda.
I know, I'm just saying that, you want to look at it for the future.
Well, if it's brought to us, we look at it in the future. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't
When it's on the
drive the
agenda.
boat, other people do, yeah.
Staff.
So today you're looking, do we, amongst us, want to see if we have any, I'm fundamentally good with what you're doing, subject to all the many, many things. That's why I was a little hesitant to go for, to go for a motion to recommend unless we do outline all of these. But it's just the fundamental confirmation good enough for your meeting. I guess that's what's going to be best for you guys and for our group to make sure that we're fully covered.
So also remember, there's two
Two
separate
things, it's
agenda
rezone and-
items, right?
right,
So one
yep.
is the rezone that carries on through county board to the county executive, right? That has lots of different committees to go through. And then you have the certified survey map separately. So if the CSM is making you a little bit nervous because of the potential changes to it, that would be the one that you may want to table. Otherwise, if you feel confident in having Dave and I kind of work through all these issues with Trio and with Genesee, which really are not, Land Resources already recommended preliminary approval. Those steps are in motion. There's just very normal things that now need to happen when you've kind of gotten the yes, move forward with your development, green light, essentially. So,
Well, I think we should deal with the rezone, because that's the agenda item that we're on.
Yes, yeah, correct, three zones first, under 4A, and then the CSM is 5A, so.
Yeah, I think regarding the rezone, there are many steps that have to go in parallel, and it's a recommendation to the town board. So I think we're okay with recommending the rezone. So I'll make a motion that we recommend to the town board to approve the request to rezone from A1 Agriculture District to A2 Rural Home District for the property identified as DLT 0860.991.001, subject to the following conditions. To preserve the isolated natural resource area, disturbances on Lot 1 and 2 is limited to the 30,000 square foot on each lot, excluding the grading required for the public road on Lot 2. The disturbance envelope includes grading, tree removal, all structures, and the septic system. In addition, isolated natural resource area preservation restrictions shall be added to the CSM.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so the motion for rezone carries 4A. And then under new business 5A, it's the consideration and possible action on a request from Robert Davies, RED Properties LLC, and William B. and Kathy J. Davies, revocable trust owners, for approval of a certified survey map to create 2 residential parcels, outlots, and a public road on a 10.4946 acre parcel located on the south side of US Highway 18, approximately 1,200 feet west of County Road G, Elmhurst Road. Tax key number DELT 0860-991-001. And I know this has already been addressed with the prior report, so we don't need more on that. I think it's discussion on
Yeah, I think.
this issue.
I think regarding the CSM, I'm not gonna sign it and Michelle's not gonna sign it until all these conditions are met. So I think, you know, and again, it's just a recommendation to the town board. So I think we're okay, you know, I think we all understand the vision and we understand these, hopefully we all understand the requirements and then conditions that have been added in Rebecca's report. So again, I would make a motion to recommend to the Plan Commission make some recommendation for preliminary approval of the proposed CSM, subject to the conditions listed in Rebecca's report.
It's a preliminary approval. Preliminary approval of thing for the plan commission?
My understanding, and someone can correct me, is it's an approval, except the town board is the ultimate
Beautiful.
approver. So we give a recommendation and we say we preliminarily approve it, but then the town board is the entity that's going to have to make the final approval.
I see, you're using it more as a descriptive word than a legal word. Got it,
Yes.
I understand.
Yes.
Okay.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, thank you both.
All right, thank you very much.
And then we have item 5B. It is the consideration and possible action on a request from Carrie and Pollyanna Rogers, owners, to rezone approximately 2.8 acres of land from the A1 Agricultural District to the A2 Rural Home District in order to construct an accessory structure at W310S231 Maple Avenue, tax key number DELT 0849.997.009. Ms. Lado?
I don't have too much more to add than what was discussed earlier. I will just kind of go through that analysis that the purpose and intent of the A2 district is to provide low-density, single-family residential development with limited farming. And the A1 district is intended to focus on agriculture and areas with potential for future uses. This parcel has already reached its development potential, especially with that large acre-plus wetland complex. So the A2 district is a more appropriate residential district and would allow the property owner to make improvements onto his property. And is similar to the many requests that have been brought before the Town Plan Commission and Board before.
Any discussion?
We're not concerned with, I mean, this is a rezone, we're not looking at a CSM, but we're not concerned with the distance of the building, that'll just be
No.
corrected.
He won't be able to get a building permit until he submits a revised. Yeah.
Any other comments?
I'll move that the Plan Commission recommends to the town board the approval of the rezone from A1 to A2 for the property located at W310S231.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. And then item 5C is the consideration and possible action on a request from David Williams, owner, for a one-lot certified survey map to add approximately 0.19 acres of land to an existing residential parcel at S11 W28264 Summit Avenue, US Highway 18, tax key number DELT 0864998.001. Ms. Lato?
Okay, so this subject property is located north of 18 in the southeast portion of the town and is 1.5 acres. It was split off from the family farm here in 1975 to allow the owner to construct the residence near the family farm. The owner is requesting to increase the lot size ever so slightly to incorporate this garage here onto the property. So on the certified survey map, let's go to that, this one here. Here is the original line. Here's a straight line. So this area is what's being added to the property, again, to include that garage. So that garage was a part of the family farm buildings, and the owner's father at the time said, here, use this garage as, you know, your personal garage. So it's been used that way for quite some time. The owner did indicate that it's probably would need to be replaced. The next owner, whenever that may be, would probably tear it down and build a new one. This allows for adequate space to actually construct a garage. You can see here, even on the certified survey map, the topography. This is about a 13% slope, which is pretty challenging to construct a single building on like that. So that does allow a little bit more area that would be able to meet setbacks and offsets. He did receive a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals earlier this year to allow the lot line in this location. It's only 6 feet from in between each building here. Whereas in the district, I think it's 20 feet is required. So he was permitted that reduction, and then you see the CSM here as a follow-up to that. So another item I just want to point out is that the jog here, which is a little bit unusual, but if you were to do a straight line down here, it would go through the septic field of the farm, and the Environmental Health Division would not allow a septic field to be divided by a lot line. It now needs to be on the property that it serves, essentially, unless there's easements in place, and that's really not advisable to put a septic easement over someone else's property when there may be another solution, especially. So both Dave and I, the town engineer, have reviewed the CSM for technical comments. This is a revised version that addresses all of them. Right before the meeting, though, the owner, who is in attendance here, did point out in the signature certificate for, I think, the town plan commission, they have town of Merton listed on here, so that needs to be revised to town of Delafield. So that's the minor comment there. They also need to go to city of Waukesha for extraterritorial review. So any changes that they incorporate or they require may be incorporated as well, but I have not really seen them do that before. So other than that, the CSM before you is the final one besides that minor change.
Any discussion or comments?
Question was gonna be about the setbacks between these two buildings. It's 6 feet. Does the decision of the Board of Zoning Appeals live on even if other owners?
Yeah, so that runs with the property. So there wouldn't, oh, do you mean like if they build a new building, they get to be 6 feet?
I actually remember sitting here in the town where someone had a building that was close and they wanted to tear it down or add on a second story, and we had a problem with it because change, and it was
Oh,
close to the lot line, existing lot. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly what it was.
sure. So just to kind of keep it high level, I would say that whatever rules are in place at the time that someone applies to do something is what is applicable.
Okay.
So if the town, which currently has non-conforming provisions in place, if those are still in effect in the 10 years or so that someone wants to do something, that would be what they would need to follow.
I was only thinking that a future owner may want to recognize that they may not be able to make it.
Yeah, it's my understanding from the owner, and he can speak to this in a minute maybe, but that a new owner in the future will likely tear this down and build new, and they'd have to build to the required offset requirement. So, yeah, good question.
Any other comments or discussion?
Can we go back to the aerial for a
Sure.
second?
green building on the other side of the 6-foot offset, the paddock?
That I don't know. That would be a question for the owner. You mean this here?
Right.
And sir, if you can please state your name and your address.
David Williams, S11W28264 Summit Avenue, Waukesha, Highway 18. The green is the roof of a machine shed that stores machinery. We looked at ways that we could include that area in our house lot, but there was no way without gerrymandering through all those buildings, and you still wouldn't get your required setbacks. As Rebecca said, with the revised lot line, there would be room enough for a person to put a new garage in the area just west of the existing one and still meet all setbacks. And so we're doing this because of the potential of selling the property sometime to clear that up, kind of proactive. So right now, it's my wife and I on the house. The farmstead is owned by my sister and I, so it's basically the same ownership on each side. The township has a affidavit signed by everyone associated with the farmstead that they're in agreement with it. So it's kind of same ownership on both sides of the line. And we're trying to be proactive and get that straightened out at this time rather than in the future. Any other questions?
Are there any utility easements or anything else that come into play here?
No, not, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments or discussion?
Motion to recommend to the town board to approve the CSM at S11W28264 Summit Avenue, subject to the following conditions being satisfied prior to the town signing the final CSM. All technical comments of the town planner, town engineer, and town attorney, if applicable, shall be addressed on the final CSM, and all City of Waukesha extraterritorial review entity comments shall be addressed on the final CSM also.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. And then item 5D on the agenda is consideration and possible action on a request from DM Braden LLC owner, Vicky Braden applicant, for approval of a one-lot certified survey map to combine two parcels at N30 W29315 Hillcrest Drive. Tax key numbers DELT 0764.029 and .030. Ms. Light?
Chairwoman, I'm going to go into the hallway and recuse myself from this discussion.
Okay. And so Mr. Kranick has left the room, and so we will continue with the discussion. Ms. Lato?
Okay. So the subject property is located on the north side of Pewaukee Lake and is entirely within Waukesha County zoning jurisdiction. The area consists of these two substandard lots here. You can see that there is a house and a garage. These are attached. There's just a big shadow here that extends over the common lot line. They are proposing a certified survey map to remove the interior lot line so they can apply for permits to do a second-story addition with Waukesha County, similar to what you've seen in the past. A couple other things just to note about this particular lot. They are, currently access comes from Orchard Avenue, but they are relocating after they received approval from the town highway superintendent to come off of Hillcrest instead. They said that's really like the front of the house. And so that's where they're going to relocate that. And it also just brought up a discussion of Orchard Avenue and whether or not it's public or private. There are, in this whole area, in other areas in the town as well, there's always been a little bit of confusion on whether or not they're public or private or mill tax roads or not anymore, or what the deal is. So we are going to, and I've already started with the town highway department going through the roads, which ones are truly public roads and which ones are private roads that are maintained by the property owners. And a resolution will be forthcoming probably, I think, in January, just to kind of lay out exactly what the status is of all the roads. And that's identified there in the report. So the final CSM, if that gets approved by the town, that will have a clarifying statement of Orchard Avenue, if it's public or private, because that's shown on the CSM. And that's a requirement that it be determined. So, or that it be labeled on the CSM, rather, whether it's a public or private road. Other than that, both Dave and I reviewed this CSM as well and provided technical comments. There were very few comments. There was a typo, a note that needed to be revised, and then the surveyor had some comments as well for Chapter 236 technicalities. And then Waukesha County and Village of Heartland also need to review the CSM. So I am recommending approval of this CSM for the lot combination, provided that the technical comments all be addressed on a revised CSM and that Waukesha County and Village of Heartland comments be addressed.
Thank you.
Do you have any comments, or is there any, I don't want to say concern, is that the right word, about the actual address changing? I mean, I know you said you just went through the thing about private roads and not, but is there?
I think their address actually is
Is Hillcrest.
on Hillcrest
Oh, so the
already.
actual address already is Hillcrest?
Correct,
Oh, okay,
yeah.
so even though they access from Orchard, so, okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
got it. Right. That's right, well, it probably
Have
said
you
that there, didn't it? I was first, yeah, okay, it says Hillcrest first. I was thinking that some address was changing too, okay.
And have you received any comments from anyone on this?
Not outside of the town engineer, no.
Okay. And no one in the public has reached out?
Oh, no.
Seems like this is kind of like things, what we do. This is the right thing to do, so I'm okay with it.
When I first looked at it, I did think it was two houses, and I just started.
Yeah.
Okay. Any motion?
Okay, you look, I motion to recommend that we approve the CSM at N30W29315 Hillcrest Drive, subject to the following conditions being satisfied prior to the town signing the final certified survey map, that being all technical comments of the town planner and town engineer shall be addressed on the final CSM, and Waukesha County and Village of Heartland extraterritorial review entity comments shall be addressed on the final CSM.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries. And Mr. Kranek is back in the room, so I'll continue with item 6, discussion. A, discuss codifying language regarding plumbing in outbuildings. Ms.
Okay.
Lado.
So this has come up just in a few different situations lately, but primarily from the building inspector asking Michelle and I our opinion on some different building plans that he received for some modifications to an existing outbuilding. He said, well, how much plumbing is too much plumbing in an outbuilding? This person in particular wanted multiple sinks, half bathroom, and on different levels, and the root of it was getting down to, well, is there a business that's going to be run out of here? What do you need in here? So I had asked Mike, what has the town typically, what is the policy here? Because there's nothing ordained specifically about plumbing in outbuildings. And that's always been a tricky thing to regulate. Waukesha County has a longstanding policy that limited plumbing is permitted, and it sounds like Delafield has kind of adopted that same thing. It's entirely up to the discretion of the person reviewing the permit of what that means. With the county policy, that meant you got a sink and a toilet, or if you really wanted, you could have a shower and a sink, or a shower and a toilet, I guess, but limited plumbing. No one ever chose that last option, obviously. But we're trying to kind of get to the bottom of whether or not it's appropriate to continue that as a policy or if it should be ordained. And just looking for a little bit of guidance from the Plan Commission on your thoughts about that of plumbing and accessory buildings. It is getting a lot more common for people to use accessory buildings as kind of extra hangout spaces. Since, with kind of starting with COVID of people staying at home, right, trying to make their homes more cozy and more fun and whatnot, that trend continues on. People like to be at home, and we see that quite a lot in permits still. And the biggest reason I think that it causes concern for regulators is that they'll turn into living units. And Waukesha County as a whole, meaning individual municipalities, but then even Waukesha County, no one has really addressed the accessory dwelling unit topic yet, which is what that essentially becomes, right? When you add a bathroom to an accessory building, it becomes an accessory dwelling unit. And I don't know that anyone's really ready to do that. So for now, just looking for a little bit of guidance on if the policy is sufficient, or if you'd like us to maybe explore some language that can be ordained so that the building inspector has something to actually point to. For example, he relayed that in pool houses, well, if they want a full bathroom, he gives them a full bathroom because it's a pool house and you can take a shower, which makes sense. But again, that's pretty easily can become a little living unit guest house. I guess the fundamental question is, if it does, do you care? What is the feeling on that? There are other codes in Waukesha County, Town of Eagle, I think Town of McGuanago has this as well, where something like a pool house, the shower has to be on the outside of the building so that you can rinse off outside when you're done, but it helps kind of prevent the living units. If you're living there, you're probably not going to go take a shower outside in the winter, I would think. So there's different types of language that you can put in to help guide people when they're designing their accessory buildings or trying to remodel them, but really for the building inspectors who are looking at these zoning permits of it's not just a policy, it's here in the ordinance, this is what you're allowed, end of story. That being said, from people in the trades will tell you, once any plumbing is in a building, it's pretty easy to add more plumbing in your building. So.
Concern over lawsuits because nothing's written down. If someone comes to you and you make a discretionary call, can't someone be like, well, that says I can't do that?
It's always better to have something ordained than a policy. I think long-standing policies have held up pretty well over time. Most of the time people back off and they want their building permit. But it is better to have something actually ordained. But it also just sort of depends on what the general feeling is. I mean, I have to say I haven't been here long enough to know what kind of complaints there might be over people living in accessory buildings. There certainly have been a lot of boathouses around Pewaukee Lake that I know of that were turned into living units, or that just were living units back when they were, constructed almost, right? I've been in some of them doing inspections when I was with the county, and then there's not much you can do about those that already exist until and unless they get torn down, right? Yes.
I think people use them personally, that's one thing. If it becomes a rental, that's another. Act against one without eliminating the other.
Well, I know that when we have some of these units that are on the lake, there was one particular, maybe 6 months ago, that there was a cottage and, they couldn't have we were very careful to make sure that it was like uninhabitable in the winter. Mm-hmm. It was whatever, it didn't have heat or, it could not be lived in the winter. So it was impossible to live there. And I think that's the challenge with the accessory building is you can have heat. You can have, if you've got a garage, given a sink and a shower, my husband would live in his garage. And so, yeah, and so, it's, but it's one of those situations where, I think it can happen.
It's a slippery slope, because you give people an inch, they're gonna take 3, 4 yards. And real concern for, you know, these individuals. It may be okay for the people doing it at the time, but what happens in the future? You know, does it become a rental unit? Does it become a accessory dwelling unit? Does it become, you know, 2 residents on one property? So it's just, historically, we really haven't allowed plumbing in accessory buildings, even around the lake. Plumbing and sinks.
Yep.
Remember, you know, there was a major league pitcher that lived on the lake that wanted to put plumbing in his workout facility, building, and we wouldn't let him do it.
And now, this is specific to boathouses, but now state statute does not allow any plumbing in a boathouse at all. Whereas before, pre-2015, you could have plumbing in there. So if they're older, they may still have it, but now no plumbing is allowed in a boathouse. However, different builders that I know of and even building inspectors will tell you that it doesn't.
How about an accessory building near the lake shore?
So,
I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
you're saying there's no plumbing allowed in a new boathouse?
correct.
I don't believe.
Not
When you-
That's happening constantly. do
I know.
So,
Yes.
And it's happening legally, so the inspectors are saying you can have a sink, you can't have like a shower. There is plumbing in boathouses that inspectors are approving.
Yes, that's illegal.
if the true worry is that it will become a dwelling for someone, can't we just have an ordinance that says, or is there an ordinance, I don't know, that says you can't have 2 people, 2 residences, 2 separate buildings
There is.
on a property?
There is, except, you know, it still is,
It's only enforceable by complaint, you know, like.
Well,
I'm looking at it a little different. I mean, I guess I feel like if you've got a property, and I really think each situation's going to be individual. So somebody has a property and they have a building and they want to build an in-law suite. And I recognize you're opening up Pandora's box, because when that in-law dies, then you'll have a residence that could be rented. But then, is that so bad? That's what I guess I'm getting at. Is that are we the town saying we don't want that? I mean, as long as they're paying, I guess I'm a little more open to it, especially, I think we have to look at the situation. You know, if somebody has a work building that's far away and they want to be able to go to the bathroom, what are they supposed to do then? If they've got a building that doesn't have anything. I think we just kind of need to, as opposed to automatically, I know he's looking for something that he can just point to say yes or no, but it almost seems to me that each situation potentially warrants looking at.
I think, I think part of the issue though is, if like, it does sound the multiple sinks, half bathroom and a floor drain, it's like, that is
For this particular one?
Yeah, that is like,
but I
a,
was-
what
I
you
mean,
doing? I mean, that is, you know, that's like kind of raises some questions, especially if it's, let's say, a relative, like a 30 by 30 barn. It's like, what's all that about? I mean, so I do think that there might be a point at which we could say, this is too much. You know, I don't, it's a challenge.
So this, I know we just.
And I
read
know,
this
and I know
today.
there is actually, there is, we had a code discussion about in-law suites with that, the gentleman whose mother-in-law moved in. I don't know if you were here for that
I
one.
don't think I was, yeah.
But there was a discussion, and they discussed that the wall basically couldn't be sealed between the two of them to prevent it from becoming 2 dwellings. And it had to have, I think, 1 door, but that did come up in a discussion within the last year, with a nice young couple who were building it for parents with dementia, I
In addition
think.
to their house
Right.
for a
Which, and,
future in-law.
right, and those are the kind of things that I feel like we should be.
We did it, it was just, it couldn't become another dwelling.
They couldn't close it off and make it a rental.
And then you've got communities like, isn't it Wauwatosa, that's like giving money for this, right? Aren't they encouraging it?
They are. There's grants available. I think they do 4 a year of maybe $25,000 for the utilities involved in hooking up to the ADUs. It's a really great thought and program. However, in southeastern Wisconsin, ADUs are prohibited in most places, that there's not enough supply and demand. So the cost to build an ADU is like $250,000, $300,000. So that's not attainable generally for people to build, you know, a 600 square foot second house on their property. So it's not happening. That's,
It's
and
also
that's,
a municipality that encourages density, and I would.
Yes.
Correct.
I would suggest that our
Yeah.
municipality does not.
yes, yeah, very different situation there. But that, and I think with the in-law thing, if I'm understanding, that was attached to the house, you said? Yeah, which is very different, right, than an accessory building. Typically, accessory dwelling units are in separate standalone buildings. And by all accounts, all the town codes that I'm familiar with do not allow for it, right? You're gonna create a second home on properties that are zoned for single-family residential. There are some codes that have provisions about, you know, farm quarters, right? You can have farm quarters for people that live there. Those are kind of dangerous too, because they ultimately do get turned just into separate living units. I think that is a good discussion point of, well, if you have enough square footage, if you have enough land, doesn't matter that there's two houses close to each other on a 20-acre parcel or something. But on some of these smaller parcels, and in buildings that really aren't meant to be houses or businesses, in this particular instance, I think the cat got out of the bag that it was going to be a hairdresser
Oh, okay.
place.
Multiple things,
So,
okay.
you know, no, my wife's a hairdresser. Should be nice to do
Well, I
that
was
at
thinking it
home.
was somebody hunting and needing chicken to get the feathers and chickens in one area. That's why I was thinking, what are they doing with multiple sinks? Okay, makes more sense now.
So it can get really complicated very quickly when you allow any plumbing, but to not allow any plumbing might be seen as a little bit overly restrictive.
Well, you just hit it on the button. You just said, you know, when you do have enough land. That's why I just go back to, I think we need to look at each situation. I think we need to be consistent. We just, as a town, you know, listened to, you know, a few voices that said, oh, we need more housing. We need more housing. We need housing that's affordable. And so we put, you know, the Thomas Farm in. And now, I guess I'm just thinking, but if somebody has a big piece of land and they want to put up a couple dwellings, then to me, that's not any worse than other things that we've agreed to. That's all I'm saying. I just think we need to be consistent and open and maybe look at it per, yeah.
I think that's
Per
a
time.
better discussion. I agree with you. That's a better discussion. I personally wouldn't think attacking it by trying to limit the plumbing would be the best way to do it. I would let them put whatever they want out there.
So I will kind of bring up then the R1 and take this memo home with you. I'm sorry I didn't get this out in your packets before the holiday, but there's a memo at your table that I think you've all seen now. But in the R1A district, it's the only district that has a little bit about it. It says private detached garages not to exceed 960 square feet, not involving the conduct of business, and not including any sanitary facilities or living quarters are permitted. So that's the only district that even kind of brings up sanitary facilities or living quarters. But I think you could make that interpretation that sanitary facilities is saying, no, you can't have a bathroom, but yes, you can have a sink. So if you were going to have a workshop, you might want a sink in your workshop to wash your hands or tools or whatever it might be. I don't know. So I thought that was kind of,
Sorry, what's the lot size for R1A again?
It's a great question.
Where this falls in the terms of.
yeah.
Right, yeah, no, exactly. I would wonder too.
Just give me a second. We're getting closer.
While you're looking it up, then I'll just come up with another question, Michelle. So what is our stance about, you know, operating a business? Because, you know, so many people work from home now. They're running their business from home. But again, what is our code or what do we say on that when people, I mean, many people not just work from home, they run their business from home.
I mean, there is a code on it that specifies what you have to do in order to run a business, and you have to get a permit.
Okay, so it's just getting a permit. So I think that's what I guess I'm getting at too, by looking at each thing individually. If somebody says, I want to do this, and they follow the rules and they get their permit, I mean, and we could still look at it as a group and just say that doesn't qualify, or maybe we say, well, you know,
But I don't know that all of these things would end up coming before us. I mean, that's part of the benefit of
creating
having something is that I don't know that everything, because it sounds like some of these, you know, this existing barn with the sinks and the bathroom and the floor, that didn't come before us.
Right.
And
Now,
so it's just a question of, do you want someone on the lake to have, it sounds like some things would not be permitted, but
so that would be an option. You could say limited plumbing in an accessory building needs plan commission approval so that you could actually review it and kind of understand why someone's asking for it, essentially.
seem like it would
But-
be almost if it was more than X, because I
Yeah.
don't know that we want every sink.
Well,
to
sure,
be-
yeah.
If there's one person who's installing one sink to wash their hands, I mean, that's, either it's like, that seems like that would be a lot of sink discussions.
But we'd only be reviewing it if it was a business, right?
No, this
Well-
is any accessory building, period.
Yeah, a business in an accessory building needs to get its own separate permit, goes through its own separate permit process.
Which was what this one would be doing.
They're just not even doing it.
What's that?
They're not, like, Mike had said, I'm not going to approve these items, and he reduced it to a sink and I think he has a half bath is what he's putting in there instead. So, and then 1 acre is the minimum lot size for R1A. It's pretty small.
And so to that point, is this an issue of available land for septic and, a lot of the town is in the sanitary district around the lake. And so look at, Tom Kep's, email in here relative to, adding a, sewer accessory building that's in the referred to the sanitary district and matters in the sanitary district, whereas something that's on a larger piece of land that's not within the district might environment, somebody that's well and septic outside of the sanitary district might somehow be treated differently.
I'd argue that if you're on the sewer, you could probably handle a little bit more than if you're in sewer or well and septic, then our friends at the county get involved.
Right, but do you then defer to the sanitary district and how that's managed? And is the sanitary district consistent how that's handled around the lake in the other municipalities?
I mean, I would assume if it's the Lake Pewaukee Sanitary District, I'd assume that everyone in all the municipalities would have to follow
That's
the
correct.
same rule, because it's their district and they get to decide what goes on in the district with sewer.
Aside from the lake too, I just want to mention that it's great if we're looking at all these individually, case by case. But let's say somebody does something and they allow plumbing in their accessory building, and then they sell it in a year. You don't have any real say on the next person that's coming in. So when you're making the decisions, it has to be for the lifetime of the property, not the current use and not the current owner. So that's something that you might want to think of instead of this case-by-case basis, because the case could change year to year.
But if they turn it into a rental, we did pass a code on short-term rental,
Right.
right? Like last. So, I
Right.
mean, if they go and turn it into something, we do have, and there's a complaint, we can enforce it.
We have very little enforcement mechanism in the town, and it's likely complaint-based. Otherwise, we would not know. So,
That's the reality with everything. We're
Right.
not gonna inspect every house every year.
right. But if you
makes it
allow a little
very-
bit, then it could be a lot.
Yeah, and it's, town doesn't have the resources or the human capital to go out and enforce this. I mean, we really don't have the enforcement mechanism to, make a bunch of rules and go and enforce them.
Find them.
It's not that easy if you talk to the town attorney, it really isn't that easy to do these things, so, we really gotta think, long-term, and, somebody may come in with a great plan that we think is all great, but, there's no guarantees that plan's gonna live on and, for a lifetime, things change, people change, situations change. And that's why, historically, we've really, haven't allowed the plumbing in these accessory buildings, and I think, what Rebecca and the building inspector are looking for is, matrix or something that, what would we allow, what wouldn't we allow, and
Yeah, it just gets, I think, complicated. Mike tries to be as fair as he can of, well, I allowed this here and I allowed that there, but that gets to be a little bit slippery too, of what really is apples to apples, right? Each person's situation is maybe a little bit different, each property is a little bit different.
As
Mike-
you said, isn't the reality, if you allow a toilet and a sink, you've allowed any plumbing to go into the building, because anyone can add anything they want after that.
It's pretty easy to expand your plumbing once you've got it in there, yes.
If they're gonna deceive us
Yeah.
about having someone live there or running a business, they're gonna deceive us about adding the plumbing.
Yeah,
But imagine you live in A2 and you build a detached garage and you want to put a bathroom in it. Like, you've got a big lot, you can build a
yes.
big
That's what I'm-
accessory
that's kinda
structure,
what I'm
like,
getting- yeah.
That's really hard to be like, no, you can't do that.
No, I would expect us to allow it.
Logically, you,
And you said it in the beginning, this one, I know, and you just said historically, we haven't done this, but, you know, life's a-changing. I mean, some people are using their accessory buildings differently. They're becoming, you know, their workspaces, they're becoming just hangout spots, you know, so I just, more open to it, but.
this doesn't necessarily always stop everything, but to kind of Michelle's point of the longevity of the property and buildings and whatnot, some municipalities require deed restrictions be recorded, at least identifying that, yes, we allowed a bathroom in conjunction with this remodeling permit or a new build or whatever in an accessory building. It can only be a half bathroom. I really don't know why you'd need a shower in your garage ever.
Unless it's far from the home or something like that, but that would have to be a really big piece of property, so.
But still, like, why? You know?
Do that before you go into the house.
Yeah, I guess, but I don't know. But that's an option too. If you're, because that gets recorded against the property. When they go to sell it, they'll at least see it in the title search. Whether or not they're going to abide by it, who knows? But then you have something to hold up if there is a complaint. Hey, someone's living out of that garage. The town now has a deed restriction that says enforcement measures on it. And that kind of helps you sort of steamroll into, yes.
yeah, I think that's the only way that you could, I mean, ultimately, in my mind, that's the only way you can do it, is if we're gonna allow, you know, sinks and plumbing in accessory buildings, it needs to be documented.
Yeah.
It needs to be documented on their deed.
Yeah.
Which helps the enforcement and the finding and, you know, if there are complaints or issues down the road. And that way, you know, the individual knows that, and then, you know, the onus is on the purchaser of the property to, you know that these deed restrictions are on their property too.
Right.
and so the concern is to enforce that, you'd have to pay the attorney to go after these people, and that comes out of the town's budget, and then we're spending money enforcing things that don't get much recognition. Well, is that kind of a?
Well, you're not getting your ROI, you're spending a lot of money on attorney
Right.
fees.
I just want to make sure
you
I'm
know.
understanding the problem.
Yeah,
That's where you're going with it, is like to collect all this money and to go after these people and to cost money.
yeah, I mean, and, you know, you've got people with deep pockets who, you know,
fight it.
who will fight it, and the town doesn't have necessarily deep pockets when, you know, we're paying for public safety and roads and other things, so.
But I guess where do we think we're landing on, so this is just a discussion, so what would be the next, if there was a next step, what would the next step be? Or how does this,
Do you want to answer that? I guess in my mind, there's a couple different paths you could take. One is if you're, what I'm gathering from a few of you at least, is that you would maybe like to see something, maybe a little bit more than a policy. But what that is still maybe up for debate. So what I could do for January is put together maybe some options that you can actually look at and decide if you like any of them, and then move forward from there, maybe?
I mean, typically in the past, when it's been a decision with direction, we try and get other comparable municipalities' direction that they have. So we could reach out to other towns or other communities with similar populations and geographical area to see what they have, if anything. We can, you know, put together some sort of a by zone matrix, if that's what you're looking for, maybe by acreage or something like that. But we would just need some sort of direction from you guys on if you even want it at all. I think that's a fair, maybe straw vote to have. Do we even put all this time into this research if more than half of you don't want this at all? If more than half of you do, then we would bring back some options.
I mean, it sounds like, at least to me, that it's happening in accessory buildings because it's being approved sometimes. So it's already happening, and I guess, I don't know, my thought is just if it's already happening, perhaps that we do have something that's a matrix of sorts, or that we consider what it would be, just so we don't have, and that, I like the deed restriction idea, just so it's really clear for subsequent owners, you know, what the limits are. I mean, that's just my gut on it, because it's not, if it wasn't happening, you know, it'd be one thing, but it sounds like there's some of it, and then if there's some, it would be nice to know you can have a sink and like a toilet, but you can't have a sink, toilet, shower. Or if it's a pool house, it has to be outside. I mean, that frankly seems like a good idea with the pool house, is that the shower has to be outside, and that's from another town.
Right.
So it might be helpful to know what some other towns around us have done.
I think it'd be very helpful, at least, you know, it sounds like it is happening, and I think we need to be consistent. Have it laid out, what we allow and what we don't allow, so that there's no gray.
And then perhaps if someone wants to, you know, I know when you do an appeal to go, you know, you can ask for something different, but there's a different process to requesting that,
Oh, sure.
you know, with the zoning board of appeals. And so it's not like if, you know, to Terry's point, if someone wanted something that we'd say, okay, in that one, you know, it makes sense, it's a whatever acre lot, it might make sense on that one case with that one family, because they want to rinse before they go inside their house. I mean, there might be something different, but then at least we have a baseline.
So
Right.
right now, though, you're saying you can do a sink and
The policy is limited plumbing.
that's just what it says. So so we call it limited plumbing.
Generally, that means a sink and a toilet.
Say it again.
Generally, that means a sink and a toilet.
Good.
He said that sometimes he allows another sink in there depending on what the use is.
Well, and there's a utility sink versus a hand, I mean, there's.
Yeah, exactly,
like,
right. Yeah.
So,
So that gives you
You wanted a
many things
washer.
to do. So if you're doing that, then I know you're up in a Pandora's box, but just that right there gives people what they're looking for without living there.
It should.
Yeah. Instead of giving more. I mean, it's giving.
but that's just the current policy, and I think they're looking to codify it. So that it's
Yes.
so it's a code.
Right,
If it's codified, then it's, you know, people have to come, then they would have to come to us or a different board in order to do something more expansive than that.
Exactly. I mean, I think Mike felt like he was kind of having to barter with this person of, well, if I can't have 4 things, would you approve 3? Would you approve, you know, what would you approve? And it's like, I don't know, because it's just a policy, you know, and it's not even, it's just kind of what was passed down building inspector to building inspector, right? Of this is what I've done, and that's it. So having something codified is just a nice way to do that.
How does that play into this email, though?
Well,
At least my understanding, and this is just, I think the more restrictive rule applies. So if it's a sanitary district, that would be my understanding.
That's correct,
It
yeah.
would be the more restrictive rule. So if you have one that overlays another, so if ours is more restrictive than theirs, ours would apply. And so
Yeah.
I think it's the more restrictive.
I'm noticing that the county is not included on this email, which I'll share with them because they're the ones that are permitting these buildings. So it's probably important that they know this information because this is the first I've ever heard this before.
Yeah, that's,
So,
That's troubling.
yeah, I don't like that.
But, you know, this may also be something for Mike to get into with, as there might be implied restrictions in the plumbing code about connecting to the lateral of an adjacent building or having a separate septic field versus,
Yeah.
there might be things in the plumbing code that restrict how you execute something like that.
Sure. I know with environmental health who will do the septic review, I mean, if you're going to have a floor drain in your building, which a lot of these buildings do, right? They do require that it needs to have an outlet somewhere. They need to see when they do their preliminary site evaluation where it's actually going to outlet or it needs to go into a separate tank, depending on what it's being used for. So those, I don't know if any of you have ever received this before. I think most of you are probably on sewer, but you get what's called a preliminary site evaluation anytime that you do make an improvement on your property. So if you're proposing an addition, if you're even doing interior remodeling, things like that, environmental health comes out to your property, they do a check that, first of all, wherever your addition or your shed or whatever is going meets site distance requirements from your septic field and tank. But if you're doing interior remodeling, is your system sized appropriately for the number, it's by number of bedrooms, it's not number of bathrooms. So some people who want to have these accessory living units, they try to use that same septic system, but most of the time they can't because they're undersized. So they kind of handle that septic portion of it, and they're probably going to be the ones that say you can't hook up to this system, you got to put in a brand new one. Most people, a bathroom in their accessory building might not be worth the $40,000 that it's going to cost to install a new septic system. But you never know.
Yeah, or to
So-
that point, that could limit you from putting in a bedroom because
Exactly.
you can't add bedroom to the system's capacity.
Right.
That happens all the time with basement finishes, like people want to put a basement in their bedroom, but they can't because their sewer doesn't,
Yeah.
septic doesn't allow it.
Yeah, just to the point of plumbing code having an impact.
Yep.
Possibly on the matrix or, how that.
Okay, so it sounds like next step would just be look at what other jurisdictions around us have done, and then,
Do you want us to look at jurisdictions in and outside of Waukesha County or only within Waukesha County?
use your judgment.
Inside and outside of Waukesha County.
Got it.
Okay, and so I think that was item 6A. And so item 7, the next meeting is January 6th, 2026 at 6:30 PM.
Second. Well,
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Good evening, everyone.
8:06.
I'm at a total loss on this boathouse thing. I'm working in
Wait, what?